Welcome to Plugged In, a podcast by Okefenokee RAMC about our co-op, our community, and our shared connections. I'm your Director of Communications and Marketing, Michelle Hutchins, and joining me today is our very own Roger Sloan. He is our right-of-way manager and a journeyman lineman. Roger, it's good to have you back.
Good to be here.
It's been a busy 6 months.
Yep, it's been pretty busy.
It's been a busy
Yes, it
6
has.
months. So what we're going to talk about today, Roger, is kind of addressing some of the questions and frustrations, because that's what they are, that our members express during some of the major outages that we have. And as we all know, in the last 6 months, we've had Tropical Storm Debbie, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, and now Winter Storm Enzo, which encased most of our service area in ice.
Yeah.
So during Helene, which was the bigger of the three back in the fall, 85% of our system was down and went down in a matter of hours.
That's right.
Helene was a big storm with a big wind field, and there was no escaping her.
Yeah, it was widespread.
Widespread.
Very big storm.
And in all honesty,
Could have been worse.
We were out for 5 days. It took us 5 days to get everybody back on. But, compared to some of our sister co-ops who we ended up assisting, 5 days compared to 3-4 weeks was, a more advantageous place to be.
Don't take much during the storm. One little jog and you could be good or you could be really bad.
It's hard. We understand that it's hard for our members. We do our very best to prepare them for what could happen. And
Exactly.
we try to communicate. Here's the things you need to do to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
That's right.
Well, let's kind of jump right in. So one of the things, I post on social media regularly. I post on our website, trying to give updates, status of what's going on, what our expectations are in a very general sense, and we'll jump into that. But I took some time to kind of look through all the comments from the past 6 months of storms. And we do look at all the comments. We can't respond to them because we don't have the resources to do so.
That's right.
But we did look at all of them. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to sort of address some of the common theme questions that seem to pop up each time, even though we think we've addressed why things happen and why things happen the way they do, how things come back on the way they do. I thought if we just kind of have a conversation really pulling from what people posted on Facebook. And one of the ones is jumping right into right-of-way. There are comments like, well, you come through and cut the trees now. Why didn't you do it before the storm? Okay. So trees are always a touchy subject because we're known for our beautiful trees down here, down south.
That's
with the oaks, and they're heavy and they're beautiful. But in a storm situation, they come down. They come down, and there's a fine line between maintaining our right of way and allowing our members to maintain the shade and beauty of their landscape
and their privacy. They want to keep their privacy, so they want to keep the bushes tall, and.
So let's talk about the system improvements that have occurred. Some of it's right away, some of it's rebuild, some of it's relocation of lines. Talk about the storm of 2018 to now.
Well,
talk about how that's
I'll just
changed.
give you some, and our customers know the areas from the Florida-Georgia line to Hilliard. That whole feeder line down US 1 was rebuilt.
And brought out to the road.
Easier access, better right-of-way, and better framing, updated framing, better line. Yeah. Stood up better. Before it, I don't know when it was built the first time. Royce probably remember, but it was old copper. And we struggled to keep it in the air during the storm because it kept falling down, and a lot of it's in the woods. Well, it ain't there no more. Now it's outside the road where it's easier access, it's easier to get to.
New technologies, new materials.
New devices online. It made it a whole lot better for that particular section. You're still going to have outages. Hurricanes blow things down. Ice storms, it just gets heavy and falls down. So it ain't like it's blowing 50 yards across the road. It just gets heavy and falls over.
Well, and I think one of the things to keep in mind is our right of way is 30 feet or 15 feet on
15
either
feet.
side of the line.
That's right.
Okay, that is what we.
That's what we like to maintain.
That's what we like to maintain
That's sufficient in normal conditions.
in normal conditions.
But when you start having hurricanes and you start having ice storms, you could cut a 60-foot right of way, and you're still gonna have outages because the trees is gonna fall, and the wire's gonna get heavy. That ice on that wire changes everything. When the wire gets heavy, the slightest amount of breeze gets that wire to blowing, and it's blowing from side to side, and it'll move 3 feet with nothing touching it. It'll just sit there and swing in the breeze back and two, and it's like a pendulum. And directly it slaps together, and when it slaps together, boom, lights go out.
Yeah.
And something burns to the ground. So it ain't necessarily the trees, it's that buildup of ice that accumulates on that wire. So there's a number of factors in ice storms.
But 36 hours recovery from an ice storm is a pretty significant effort.
I think it's a great effort myself, and
Yeah.
I'm partial.
Well, you're out there doing it.
Because when you make the call and you get the help, we had 200 extra hands, and you get them 13,000 customers back on within 36 hours. There ain't too many people sitting still. And it ain't just that lineman that's out there getting it. It's the people that's taking care of that lineman, getting him fed, getting him fuel, getting him a place to lay down and rest. It's a big undertaking.
But I think that's one of the questions. People see what they see, and they don't necessarily understand how it works. So if there is tree trimming happening in the midst of a storm, it's actually in response to clearing lines and debris so that the crew behind can come repair. Explain that a little, because that's one of the questions, and I think I have it right here. I saw you drive by my house, and 2 trucks came and moved the broken line, and instead of putting it back on the power pole, they continued on. Why not fix it then? Explain how the restoration process works.
Yes, it could be a number of things. Number one, they could have just went by there and cleared it out of the road for emergency vehicles, because that's one of the big things during the storm. Working together with EMS to try to keep the roads clear in case something happens. If that customer's down the road and he needs EMS and there's a pole laying in the road, you see?
Yeah.
So what we would do would go in there and just clear it out of the road, get it clear, and then move on to the bigger outage.
Yes.
And it may be that you went by there, that pole's laying in the road, or that wire's down and you need to clear the road. You clear the road. It makes more sense to clear the road, go 4 miles down the road, turn on 200 customers rather than stay there and turn on 2.
Well, and then the other part of that.
We're eventually going to get to that point. But what you want to do during restoration, that's why you start at the substation. You start at the source. If you start at the source and you work that main feeder, when you turn that feeder on, you're going to pick up them customers that's right on that main line. Now, them that's 10, 15 spans down that line, there's a chance their line's tore down. But you got to have the feeder before you get to the secondary line.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of variables in that very question. Could have been you just clear the roads and start at the station and try to get as much on as you can in the shortest period of time. If I can get 200 or 300 on with one breakdown, I'm going to that first breakdown. I'm going to get that 200 or 300 on. Then we're going to back up and get the next biggest outage, and we're going to work it down from there.
Yeah, from the substation.
Yes, ma'am.
Out.
From the substation.
But
down.
I think there's 2 other scenarios as well.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Part of it is, in that particular instance, yes, they might have, moved the line, moved the broken pole, whatever, because it was in the road. So they wanted to provide access so you could move to the bigger outage. But the issue, too, is what people need to realize is putting line up there isn't going to bring your power back on, because most likely it's tied to that bigger one, just like you just said.
Exactly.
So you don't know what you do and you don't have until you get the main lines fixed first.
And I think a lot of times our customers, and it's nothing against them, they look out their window, and the most important power line on our system to them is the one that's in their yard.
Absolutely.
And I understand that. But I can go there and pick that one up. But if I ain't got that substation hot, it ain't going to do no good.
Right. And then the other reason you might have seen a couple of trucks come by
right.
and fix is because a lot when we have restoration, we kind of do it in phases. You've got the bird dogs that find out where the outage is.
Well, you got the assessment comes first.
The assessment comes first.
And that could have been it. He pulls in there and he does an assessment. He's got a broken pole. That assessment allows him to send that data to the main office. And once he creates that
Mm-hmm.
and sends it, he can move down the street to the next one. And somebody at the office is looking at that assessment saying, hey, Roger's got a broke pole over here. We need to get this lined up. We need to get a crew. Roger's going to need a pole. Roger's going to need this, because that information, once I send that information, it tells them exactly what I need for that location. So I can go do something else after a while in preparation for them coming. See?
Right.
So,
well, but where I was going to go with that is, yes, there's the assessment. There's identifying where the outage is, A. B, if there's debris, if there's broken poles, you've got to remove the debris.
That's
Oftentimes it is a tree crew that comes in.
Could be right away. That's right.
And takes care of that. And
Yes.
then it is the actual lineman crew behind them
That's right.
that would actually do the restoration.
That is correct.
But like you just said, you're doing the assessment, you're marking it, you're noting what's needed, you're lining it up. And so if it's on a secondary line, it's going to have to wait till those main lines get restored. But that's a very common question that we get. Here's one that is often, why are we the last to get power? Ties into the answer you just gave. Why is my power off, but my neighbor's power is on?
I hear that a lot. I'm just going to speak from the area that I spend most of my time in, is the area I live in, Folkestone. I hear it all the time.
But it
everybody
applies.
says I'm the last one to get power.
But I think it's important to realize we get these questions from across, and it applies everywhere.
But I think what happens is, up until them lights come on, that customer is looking at that outage map that we provide probably every 15 minutes. And once the lights come back on, they never look at that outage map again.
The other part of it is sometimes what people don't know is different parts of neighborhoods or different parts of road are fed from different directions.
Exactly.
So while your neighbors across the street might have lights, you may not.
You may not. It's just, and all that is system improvements and things that we've done over the years to make the system better.
So that the fewest number of people
number of people are out. And yes, this street might be on, and everybody on the other side of the street might be off.
Our power came on and then went back out. Why?
All right. I got a breaker that's got a heavy loaded line. There's 75 customers on that line. But I got a breakdown on that line.
Mm-hmm.
I want to energize that breaker because I can pick up about 60 of them, and the other 15, I'll have to do some work to get them.
Mm-hmm.
So I might cut me a temporary jumper in on that main line.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do that, I cut that jumper in, I'll energize that breaker, pick up them 60 and go to work on that 15. And once I get the work done, get ready to energize, I got to drop that breaker again, take that load off to pick that wire, to pick up the load, to pick up the 15.
The 60 have to go back out
again.
They have
to go back out.
So the 15 can come on.
So I can get the rest of them back on. That's just one scenario. Some of it is you pick it up. I've seen the time we pick it up, put it in there, drive off and leave it. 15 minutes later, tree falls and it's back down and it's on the ground again. That happens sometimes in our storm, especially. Most of the time in a hurricane, it blows through and it's gone, and then you can do your thing.
But the ice storm can have longer term effect.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's talk about that, because in the instance you just described, you could pick it up, drive off, it'd be fine, and then next thing you know, you're getting called back to fix it and a tree has come down. So that goes back to that original question about, well, if you cleared the right of way, if you did the tree trimming, it wouldn't be a problem. Well, no, because we're only able to clear the 30 feet of right of way. That's what we're legally allowed to maintain. Mm-hmm. You have told me numerous times, often when a tree is down, it is a tree that sits outside of our right of way.
It does. It sits outside. I mean, most trees, so you got a right of way, you got a power line sitting in the center of a 30-foot right of way. Most trees are taller than 15 feet. I mean, they can be a tree way outside that right of way, fall across that power line and tear it down. We try to look at it. We try to look at our right of way cut the danger trees, cut anything that we see that we feel like it's going to be a danger.
Down the road.
So something that we see, preventative maintenance. We try to do that. But there's some places you go and some customers just say, oh, no, you're not going to cut my tree.
Well,
so you leave it there.
And that is, and that's the dance, if you will.
It is. And that's just what we try to work with everybody.
Yeah. One of the issues, big issues that we had during Helene was that we had 9 substations
That's right.
that were down. And what that means is power was not coming into our system at these
That's right.
at these points. Can you first explain to everyone how that works, the purpose of the substations from the statewide transmission system, and then it took a long time for all those substations to come back up.
That's right.
And that isn't power that we control.
Nope, we don't
So
have
can you
no
explain
control
that
over
a little bit? Because we had several questions like, is Point Peter coming on? Is St. Mary's ever coming on?
The folks that we purchase our power from, they're responsible for getting the power to the substation.
Mm-hmm.
So they send it to the substation.
Yep.
Well, when the transmission line goes down, when you have multiple transmission lines go down, like it did in Helene, then all these substations, the substations are linked together in most cases. Now you understand, we're at the bottom of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not up into Macon where they crisscross.
Mm-hmm.
We're down here where they run out. Mm-hmm. Eventually, they just run out or go into Florida. Mm-hmm. Well, when a transmission line goes down, it affects multiple substations. And if you're on the tail end of that line, just like that residential customer that's on that single-phase tap that's 4.5 miles down the dirt road, sometimes you can get left out because...
Or it takes longer.
It takes longer. You don't get left out.
You don't get left out.
You don't get left out. It just takes longer to get it back up.
Yeah.
But in them situations, there are certain procedures that you have to go through. You don't have power to the substation. You got to isolate our equipment, and there ain't nothing we can do to help them get the power to us any faster,
right?
Other than make the phone calls and start getting the stuff in place.
Yep.
So we just go to work on our stuff so that when we do get the power to the substation, hopefully we can flip the switch and turn on a couple thousand.
Right. Because the other part of that situation is when there's no power coming to the substation, there's no power coming down those circuits.
Nope.
So in the situation of Helene, we had no idea what was even really out on our own system by those affected circuits from the substation.
When that happens, you basically got to go just about to every meter. And that takes time. You got to just about go to every meter and try to assess it as you go to it. Every feeder, you got to ride every feeder because you don't have no power. Mm-hmm. We have the capability at the office to be able to look and say, hey, we got power at Point Peter, but we don't have none at Laurel Island. Mm-hmm. But in that case, we couldn't do it because we didn't have no power to begin with.
Coming to the substation. So one of the questions that pops up in the Facebook feed a lot after I've done an update is, and most of the comments are fairly positive, supportive. People understand that, everybody's doing their best. Everyone's working hard. But, people do express their frustration occasionally. But then they'll say, well, when am I getting power at this address? Or when am I getting power at this location? And I just am unable to address those, A. And B, we typically work sections, chunks of line, because as you said, you're working out of the substation, so you're going to work down a circuit. But, that is a question we often get. Why can't you give us an estimated time of restoration? Why can you not? And
mainly because, and this is my theory, I can't stop every 15 minutes and call the office and give an update of where I'm at and what I'm exactly doing at that point in time. Everybody wants to know, but, we try to give an update every couple hours. Hey, we at this point, we got crews working here. So everybody knows where everybody's at. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they don't know the situation. They don't know what we're into. They don't know if we're into 3 broken poles, or if we're in a spot where we can't access a truck and we climbing poles or whatever it is we're doing. They don't. That's just a question that you're not going to be able to answer.
So there are basically too many variables with any given outage, and you've described it with the whole situation where they picked up the line, everything was great, you drove away, and a few minutes later you get a call that it's back down again because you don't know what's going to happen after the fact in storm, because you never quite know with ice when things are going to start to melt, because it's not only about weighing down, it's about snapping back. Correct?
Correct.
And then in wind, things could be up there in the air but not have fallen down, and when you start wrestling around and moving things, you might shake something else loose.
That's right.
So, I mean, that's just why we're usually pretty good at the end of any given day to report where we started, where we ended, and what our expectations are for the next day. But we generally just are very hesitant to set an estimated time of restoration, because we don't want to set an expectation that then can't be met because of so many unknown variables until you get and address each individual outage.
Most of the time, like you said, end of the day, we give an update for, how many's left, how many's been restored, and kind of get a game plan for the next day.
For the next day.
Try to be prepared to say, hey, we're going to have this, and there's a lot of stuff takes place after them crews shut down to make them preparations, to make it as fluid as possible to get the crews where they need to be, and to make the plans to, because I'm going to tell you, I put us, and I am partial, but I'll put us up against anybody when it comes to storm restoration. Some of the best people in the world doing that work. I'll put them up against anybody in the world. They just that good.
Well, I think despite being questioned, because even I got questions from media inquiries, relative to the ice storm. It's Thursday morning, and so we're just 24 hours into this, and I got the question, well, is this taking longer than expected? And I said, no, the pace of progress is pretty much on track and right in line with where we were with Helene response. It's just
every storm's not the same.
Well, they're not the same, but the types of outages that we had with the ice storm were similar with the hurricane in that there were multiple individual outages.
Right.
Once transmission came back on,
that's right,
there were multiple individual outages. And as you have already said, it depends on how much damage there is, how much time it's going to take.
Yes.
How much time it's going to take. So one of the other questions that we get sometimes is, I'm a prepay member and I'm still being charged for power when I don't have any. How can you charge me for power I don't use? Well, the truth is we're not.
Nope. If there's no digits on that meter, there ain't no money coming in.
Well, with prepay, there is an estimation. The system does an estimation. Okay. So they do see a charge. But when everything is back on, there is a true up in the system. And that's so right. Now the system, since power is restored, can go back and correct itself and say, okay, we estimated for this, but actually there was no usage. So things do get adjusted. So with prepay members, they do tend to see an estimated charge, and it's an estimated charge, but it does get fixed and corrected once we do the all clear and the system recalibrates itself.
That's kind of out of my department, but I just know if ain't no digits on that meter, there ain't no money coming in.
Right. But when there's an outage, the system can't report that either. Right. So here's another one. We get these occasionally. We get occasional comments and calls, and they're heart-wrenching. I'm going to tell you, they're heart-wrenching.
I know what you're talking about.
Whether it's super hot or it's super cold, but we'll often, get, I'm very sick, and I have a family member who's also sick. We need to warm up. We need to cool down. We need power. You need to restore my power. And it's a very impassioned plea. And it's hard. It's hard to get those voicemails because our member service representatives, they do check the phones. I know that's one of the other questions. Why aren't you answering the phones? And we can address that in a minute. You somewhat have already. But they do check the voicemails. They do forward and make notes and do service orders for what is reported on those calls. But I also get them. I see them on social media. And, we do know that there are members out there that have life safety and health issues.
Yes.
One of the things that we try very hard to do, or I try very hard to do, is when we start hearing rumblings of an approaching storm, is communicate about preparation.
Yep.
Preparation. And, I know that you've seen it in the storm restoration you've done, but if there's one thing you could say to somebody who's dependent on a medical device or whatever, and there's a storm coming, what are you going to tell them to do?
First of all, they need to make sure if they don't have any family around, they find some friends, they find a church, or they find somebody that can help them. And if all else fails, they can call 911, because we have, and I know what you're talking about. These people call personally and say, "Hey, can you get the lights on at so and so, because so and so's in a bad way." And listen, ain't nobody wants to turn them on no harder than we do, and sometimes it just ain't possible. So they just need to be prepared. That'd be my suggestion. If they don't have family close, reach out to a church or reach out to a group, somebody that can check on you, that can look after you, that can help you.
I know the counties, relative to the ice storm, had warming centers. I believe the counties during Helene had shelters.
That's right.
I know it's hard to believe sometimes that a storm's going to be as bad as everyone's saying it's going to be. But, every time we have one approaching, I'm always with the messaging about, get your emergency kit, get your food, get your water, get your medicine, get your supplies for 3 days minimum, 7 days preferably, whether you're going to shelter in place, meaning you're going to stay in your home, or whether you're going to go somewhere else, whether you're going to evacuate hours away or whether you're going to go to a friend's house somewhere else. And we do put that communication out there. It's on our website. It's on our social media. Often we send text alerts to the same, directing them to where they can get more information about preparing. But I think in the last 5-6 years, we've had enough storms that when there's a threat of a storm, it's best to be prepared for the worst.
I'd rather be prepared and not need my stuff than not be prepared. I mean, you can't take a chance. We can't take that chance. Our members deserve better. We're not going to take that chance.
Well, and so that is another question that got posted, is the perception that we weren't prepared and we didn't have enough people staged and ready to respond. And that's just a perception. But I have to say that is not the case. I mean, when we know one's coming and we're worried that it's severe, we're getting hotel rooms, we're getting our contractors lined up, and they're sending us crews from across the state and across Florida, depending, both Florida and Georgia.
Or Missouri.
Or Missouri.
That's
and
right.
then we're getting help from our sister co-ops. But in a situation, you got to think back to Helene, and you got to think back to the ice storm season. They covered most of the state of Georgia.
That's why we ended up with crews from Missouri.
Right, because people can't release their own crews now because they're going to be impacted as well.
That's right.
And it takes time for people to arrive. Now, with Helene, we had those Missouri crews here the next day, 140 some extra helping hands, like I said before, on top of our contractor crews that were already pre-staged. But I think people need to understand that, no, we do get the help in advance. We can't go out in the middle of the storm either.
You can't guess how bad it's going to be.
Right.
I mean, it costs money. When you start pulling in crews, it costs a pretty substantial amount to have a line crew. A 7-man line crew is a lot of money. And they're a big help. But if you got a bunch of people sitting around and the storm come in and you don't need them, then you spent that money regardless of whether they working or not.
Right.
And we try to be, we try to make sure we got enough. Sometimes you can get them, sometimes you can't.
Well,
it's just the way it works.
And I mean, you talk about the cost. I mean, that's where FEMA comes in and we look for reimbursement, but
That's right.
that's, we try, like you said, we're trying to be diligent on both sides and
That's
not overspending, but being prepared.
That's right.
Always being prepared.
Always being prepared.
So another comment we sometimes hear, and I don't really know where people get these perceptions, but I honor that is their reality. FPL and Georgia Power never lose power. Okefenokee always loses power. How do you explain to people that a lot of our service territory, well, much of it might be similar to what FPL is serving or what Georgia Power is serving, but particularly in the state of Georgia, if you look at the map, co-ops cover or serve 75% of the land mass in the state of Georgia. Why is that? Because it's rural.
And Georgia Power don't want to serve nothing that's rural.
Well, that goes back to our
I tell 'em
history.
this.
That goes back to our history and our
That's right.
founding.
That's right.
But if you look at Atlanta and Savannah and Augusta and Athens and Macon, those are the pockets where you've got a higher population density where Georgia Power is serving, and it's less rural. It's not the farming communities that
right.
most of our service area, whether it's tree farming, tree agriculture, or other types of agriculture across Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia.
Right. I tell them a lot of times, number one, when they say that Florida Power Line and Georgia Power don't never go out, that's a false statement.
Well, it is.
It is a false
But
statement.
what's happening in their backyard is what's most, like
Exactly.
you said earlier,
Exactly.
it's what's most important.
Think about
to me.
this. Think about this. If I'm gonna talk about, I'll just talk about Folkestone. When you look at Georgia Power, where is Georgia Power? Right down Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
How many trees on Main Street? Ain't many trees on Main Street. Reach the power line.
Right.
Comes out of the substation, goes down 3rd Street, goes down Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Serves a bunch of people in a small location.
That's
Okefenokee Electric, what, 3,700 miles of power line, right? And 40,000 customers, what, 11 customers to the mile?
Mm-hmm.
We have to go we have to go a mile just to get 11 customers.
Right.
They go 3 miles and they probably got no telling how many right there.
Close to 100 or so.
And what they got to worry about? A building falling on the power line? Maybe a car hitting the pole. They don't have to deal with it.
That's just the difference.
That's what I'm saying. What we're doing is way more stretched out. It's a bigger area with a whole lot more exposure.
And the terrain is
the
different.
exposure is the key.
Exposure.
The exposure is the key. People say, well, I live right here by the office. They talking about the Hilliard office.
Mm-hmm.
The Hilliard office is probably 15 miles from the substation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually comes across the river from another state, comes out of Georgia into Florida to get to the Hilliard substation. So, that's exposure. That's 15 miles of exposure. Mm-hmm. How many trees and how many poles is in that 15 miles? A lot.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the beast. That's what we signed up for.
Well, and that's why we exist.
Exactly.
You go back again, the co-op exists because when no one else would bring power to the rural areas, the farmers created the cooperative collective and got low interest government funding to bring power to themselves. And we've told that story before as well. But it goes back to why we even are here.
That's right.
And it's just a reminder, because you're right. I mean, all utilities have to deal with power outages when there are major forces of nature that come through our service territory. But yeah, when you and I think you make a good point. We have an average of 11 members per mile of line, but the other utilities probably have 30 to 40 members on every mile of line, and so it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it is.
But I want to honor the question
Yes, I
because
understand.
it is a perception, and so our point is to try to address those.
And I hope I explained it, maybe.
Yeah. No. So I'm trying to see what else we got here. So no one is answering the phones during a storm. Let's talk about that a little bit. You alluded to it earlier about when we have a storm and we have 250 extra people in our service territory scattered across Kingsland, Nahana, and Hilliard, trying to attack on all fronts. it's a lot of coordination of lodging and food and just making sure
Just
fuel,
material,
getting
material from point A to point B,
so that they can focus on the work.
Yeah.
So why aren't people on the phones? Why, when we're in the middle of these things, do we close our office to the public and you can't easily get someone on the phone? It's because, 250 extra people plus our own staff has to be fed. Because most everyone has been working from
round the clock.
Round the clock. I mean, it does go from before daylight, particularly in the instance of a hurricane, before daylight to as late as you can. But there are, everybody needs rest to be effective. Because those, just as we are helping support the extra helping hands and our own crews, we need the extra support from our member services staff and anyone else in our accounting staff, or we need all hands on deck to get food prepared, to box it up, to get it delivered, to get the supplies that we might need to address an extra meal. And with the hurricane, I mean, our community came out in force, which was amazing, helping us feed everybody. And we're internally grateful, and we had thanked everybody profusely when that occurred. But it is an important part of what the co-op is. We're friends, we're neighbors, we're family. And everyone is committed to doing the best job possible when it is safe to do so.
Guarantee you.
Because safety is job one. And,
yes, it is.
I mean, the idea...
And I hate to say it, but when you look back at the amount of storms that we've had, and you look at the work that was done, everybody went home. Everybody went home safe. And that's big. That's something to be thankful for.
Yes. I mean, it's important that we respond to our members' needs, but we also need to take care of our employees who are doing the work to serve them.
And the ones that come and help.
Well,
everybody has to be, everybody's on board. I think personally, from a personal standpoint, storm is when we're at our best, because at that point we're just hammer down, get it done.
Everyone's focused.
And I know there's a lot of things that people have questions about, just like some of that can get under your skin sometimes, but
it's because
we love our customers. The things we do that they don't see, if they seen them, they would say, hey, them people really care about us. They really want to keep our lights on. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it with the guys in the field doing the work. They'll go above and beyond to get somebody's lights on.
Well, I agree. And I mean, I look at Helene, and when I, knew everything was going to kind of wind down for the evening, but yet by the time I went to bed, lights were still coming on.
That's right.
I think that's the example of, it's just one more, one more. And, at some point you do have to stop and get some rest.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
that it is a true testament to everyone's commitment. And, we honor that these are the cares and concerns of our members, and we hope that this helped address some of those. That's our intent. We do see your questions. We do get your voicemails. We can't answer them in the moment. It just where our resources are needed elsewhere. But I think one of the biggest takeaways is not only explaining the why of these questions, but is, if we haven't learned anything, we've learned that storms are happening.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to continue to happen.
That's right.
And, we work very hard to advise, to put the warnings out there, to educate as to how to be prepared, not just a week before it's about to hit, but, we've been through this, okay? So if you were impacted, rebuild your stockpile. Make sure you have everything that you need, water and food, on hand, so that you're not trying to scramble around with everyone else when a storm is approaching. And that if you start to hear rumblings, if you see that we've posted something on social, or it's on the website, or you hear an Okie employee talking about what the co-op's doing, pay attention.
Yeah.
Because we're taking it seriously.
Just be prepared for that. Be prepared for it. And if it don't happen, so what? So you got a generator. So you got an extra couple of cans of gas sitting around. Pour it in your car. But be prepared.
Be prepared.
Just do your best to be prepared.
Be
And you know what? I know how it is in my neighborhood. My neighborhood, everybody's looking out for each other. After the storm's over, I'm going to work, and I hear the stories of the neighbors checking on each other, making sure that everybody's okay. And hey, I've come home and found my yard cleaned up while I was out working.
Yeah.
I don't know who did it. Don't matter. It's happened to a couple of us linemen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's all about the community.
Check on one another.
Check on one another.
Whether you know your neighbor or not.
Yeah, look after him.
Look at, that.
That's right.
Now's the time to get to know who that
Yes,
person is,
get
so
to
that
know
when
and get us somewhat of a plan. Because
together.
I'm going to tell you, we've seen some storms, but it could be way worse. This weather ain't nothing to play with.
Well, we have been, yes, we've had damage. Yes, members
Yes,
have
we
suffered.
have.
But
Yes.
at the same time, we've recovered fairly quickly.
Very well.
And that's a testament to all of our crews and the mutual aid that we get. Roger, thank you for taking the time to discuss this with me.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there, I hope it helps clear up some of the questions and the reasons why things occur the way they occur during the storm. But again, now is the time to prepare for the next one. That's right. Please do so and take care.